I'm gravely concerned. Yes, we're not even close to the right slide there, Debbie. I don't know what you guys are doing back there.
Quit playing with it.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Oh, you know what? We were in the right place. I moved that slide right before church. I'm still blaming you because you didn't remind me.
I'm sorry.
All right, today's sermon's in Luke 24. So if you have a Bible, of course you have a Bible, because nobody would come to church without a Bible. That wouldn't make any sense. Go to Luke 24. We're celebrating Palm Sunday. Like I said earlier, that had to be a big event. I wonder if that was like one of Jesus' favorite days here on earth. You know, because at some point they said, hey, you're going to tell your disciples to shut up. They can't be declaring you king. They can't be saying, he saves. And Jesus said, dude, if they be quiet, even the rocks will cry out. That had to kind of be a good day. He rides into town, and they're waving palm branches, and they're laying them down for the donkey to step on. And pretty much from the moment he gets off that donkey, it goes downhill quick. Does anybody know the first thing he does when he gets into Jerusalem? Clears the temple. You've heard this story. He goes in, he sees people buying and selling inside the temple courts, and he very calmly and politely explains to them how that's not appropriate. Yeah, no, dude loses his mind. Like literally starts flipping tables. Makes a whip, chases people out, clears the court of the Gentiles, and he says, you guys have turned my father's house from a house of prayer into a den of thieves. What, are you kidding me? How many friends do you think he made that day? Yeah, not too many. So then he starts some teaching in the temple courts, now that he's chased everybody out of there, so it's like him and 4 of his friends at this point, I guess. And as he's teaching, the religious leaders, the elders and the Pharisees and scribes, they're coming up and they're kind of asking him questions to try to catch him. And at first he's kind of putting up with their questions, and the longer it goes, the more abrasive he gets, almost abrupt. And then he gets to what we call the 7 woes of the Pharisees, where pretty much he looks at the religious leaders and says, you guys be damned. You're going to hell. Everyone who follows you is going to hell. You make someone a convert, and as soon as they convert, they're twice as much a son of the devil as you. I mean, he just lays into all the religious leaders. And we think, yeah. Except that would be like a guest speaker coming in this morning. Imagine I'm sitting with my wife and they say, your pastor's a liar and he's going to hell. And anybody who follows him is going to hell. Everyone's like, oh snap. That's my pastor. If he's going to hell, then anyone who follows, like, you see, he pretty much told the whole dang crowd, they're going to hell. We wonder, how could the crowd that shouted Hosanna on Sunday shout crucify him on Friday? It's easy. He told them to go to hell. And he told them that's where they were going. But by Monday evening, the crowd is significantly thin to the point where Jesus makes no public statements on Tuesday or Wednesday. The crowds disperse. Thursday night he gets arrested. The disciples flee. Peter denies him. Hosanna! Oh, this sucks. How quickly it went from this is the moment to what are we going to do? What do you think they were thinking? He gets arrested. He's at trial. He's found guilty. He's crucified. He's dead. Do you know how many verses in the Bible are dedicated to that Saturday between the Friday where he died and Sunday where he rose? 0. Not a word. You wonder what they were thinking. We're going to get a glimpse here in a moment. But how about, I didn't see that coming. I thought he was the guy. I thought this was it. We were way off. I mean, that is soul-crushing disappointment. They were looking for freedom for their country. They were looking for deliverance to come at the hand of God. Everything they had, they were all in on Jesus. And he disappointed big time. Has God ever disappointed you? Don't sit there like he has. Absolutely he has. Hey, I asked for this. I prayed for something good and you didn't come through. I found this great quote, and I tell you who said it, but like everybody claims it. So, disappointment is the difference between expectations and experience. They were expecting a king on Monday morning. And what they had was crushing disappointment by Saturday. Almost to the point where maybe they just wasted 3 years of their lives, embarrassed themselves by following this guy. Now we got to go home and see my father-in-law and the rest of my family. And we've been touting Jesus around for years. God just doesn't always deliver. Sometimes God says no. Sometimes God doesn't even answer. Sometimes God allows evil. Sometimes God allows a dream to die. And that is soul-crushing disappointment. It's not just, oh man, I was hoping we'd get pizza today and they're closed. That's, I don't. You've been there. I didn't think this. I never saw this. This is not the way it was supposed to go. Disappointment will not just shake you, but it'll shake your faith. Listen, if you haven't come to the place in your walk with God where you have not said, I don't know, then you haven't really been following very hard. You're going to come to places in your walk with God where you're going to wonder why you're following. But it was all better on Sunday morning, right? And Sunday morning, some women go to the tomb to put some perfume on the body. I don't understand all the traditions. I don't really care. But they show up and the stone's rolled away. The stone's not supposed to be rolled away. They go inside. There's no body. That's super creepy. And then there's an angel or two angels, most likely two, definitely two. There's two angels. And the angels say, what are you doing looking for the dead among the living? We're looking for the living. I can't remember how it was. But Jesus isn't here. He's alive. And they're like, oh my gosh, Jesus is alive. So they go running out of the tomb. They're going to go back and now tell the disciples. And they bump into Jesus. And he's like, hey, go tell Peter and the others. And they're like, sure, no problem. Why they don't invite him? I don't know. They're a little excited. They get back to where the disciples are hanging out. And they're like, hey, wait, oh my gosh. So the stone angel, Jesus is alive. Just saw him. Yeah, he is. Sure he is, sweetheart. Well, Peter and John go running to the tomb. Peter and John find stone rolled away. Cloths laying on the stone, but no angel, no Jesus. Yeah, he's alive! Is that what you think? No, what the heck happened? Someone took his body. They go back. They don't believe a word these women say. And I'm not making this up. Go read the Gospel of Mark. And Mark even says that two disciples run into Jesus later that day and come back report, and they don't believe them either. They are so disappointed that they can't even believe the supernatural reports they're hearing, and why would they? That's a crazy story. We read that story, and we get excited when it says, on the third day. We're like, oh, like, the lights start to come up, and we know exactly what's happening because we know that he knows what he's doing. See, we've got the big picture. It's so much easier to read it when we know what's coming next. It's way harder to live it. Why would Jesus put them through that? I mean, why didn't he just tell them up front that I'm going to go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be betrayed, and I'm going to be killed, and on the third day I'm going to rise again? Well, he did. But Jesus was always kind of talking in parables and mysteries, and then really, I mean, clearly he's not going to go to Jerusalem and be arrested and murdered, so I'm not sure what he's getting at here. But he did warn them. We know that Jesus knows what he's doing. So you in Luke 24? Luke 24 and verse 13. That very day, Easter Sunday, let's call it noon, okay? That very day, two of the disciples, not like John, Peter, James, like not two of the apostles, just two of the guys who had been following Jesus. That very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Sunday morning, there's an empty tomb. There's a report of a resurrection. Where do you think they're going? Probably home. Passover's over. That whole Jesus thing, that didn't pan out too well. Verse 14. And they were talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. He said to them, why am I supposed to stop there? I don't know. My notes are weak. He knows what he's doing when our focus is weak. I definitely skipped a verse. Come on, Bob. Verse 16. I swear I can see. My contacts are, I don't know, maybe they're in the wrong eyes. They were talking with each other about all the things that have happened. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. That's the important part. He knows what he's doing when our focus is weak. Have you ever been sidelined with disappointment? Broadsided. Like, I'm kind of prepared for this and this and this and this, and I'm really not going to be thrown off if I'm driving somewhere today and the car overheats. Like, I've got a plan, a backup plan for that, you know. But like, if my wife died suddenly, I have no plan for that. And when disappointment hits you from nowhere, it's not that you get tunnel vision. You're just kind of living right here. You're all in your head. You're not really... Not that you're not sure what's going on, you don't care what's going on. And there's certainly something supernatural happening here because their eyes were kept from recognizing Jesus. But isn't it really cool that that's where he met them? Like, he met them. He went to them. God meets us in our disappointment. He'll come to us. He'll come find us. The Bible says that God is close to the brokenhearted. It doesn't mean the brokenhearted have to go find God. It means that God comes to find them. He doesn't always reveal himself right away either. It'd be really nice if God would show up and say, hey Bob, it's me, God, I'm here. It's going to be cool. Because instantly I'd relax and I'd be fine. But that's not what Jesus does. See, it's really hard to see God when we're hurting. It's really hard to see where God is, what he's doing, to pay attention to what he's saying to me. We get blinded by pain and insecurity. We're discouraged. We want to give up and go home and quit. You can't blame these guys for wanting to give up and go home and quit. But do we still trust that God is in control? Do we still know that he knows what he's doing? Verse 17. And he said to them, what is this conversation you're holding with each other as you walk? And they stood still, looking sad. What were they doing? Come on, picture it. They're walking and talking. And a guy shows up and says, hey, what are you guys talking about? And they stood still, looking sad. He knows what he's doing when our hearts are weak. Have you ever just been stopped in your tracks because you're about to tell a terrible story? Back in 2004 or 5, I was almost engaged. And I was and the girl broke it off with me, and I was at a lumber yard a couple of days later, and I'm loading lumber in the back of my truck, and I bumped into a guy from church, and we kind of know each other. He's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, hey, good, Larry, nice to see you. And he's like, hey, man, I hear you're getting married soon. And within a second, he went, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's all over your face. You been there? Somebody brings up that thing and you just, I can't even walk and tell this story. Jesus asked them what's going on, and they don't even have the energy to walk and tell the story. That's how disheartened these guys are. See, excited people, they pace and they talk with their hands. You know, even an Italian will put his hands in his pocket when he's sad. Come on, it's funny. It's like, is that racist? I don't think so. They're not depressed. You understand there's a difference here, right? Depression is, I'm in a funk and I can't get out and I don't know why. And I need someone to help me figure that out. They're sad. They're discouraged. In 2014, Michelle and I lost a baby in early January, late December, somewhere in there. And I was talking to doctors and counselors, and they all said the same thing. Would you like an antidepressant? I said, no, I'm not depressed. I'm sad. I know what's wrong. Like, this isn't a clinical problem. This is a mourning problem. I can't get myself to the point. Like, you guys see there's a difference between depression and being sad and disappointed, okay? We're not talking about a mental problem. These guys are hurting because of something that happened to them. And here's Jesus in their pain saying, what's going on? Tell me. Softly engaging them, because Jesus understands that pain must be processed. Jesus himself was the one who said, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So here's Jesus ministering to his guys, encouraging the mourning process. Verse 21. No, not verse 21. Verse 18. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, dude, are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened here in these days? Hey, what are you guys talking about? What do you think we're talking about? Are you like the only guy in the city that has no clue what's going on? And he said to them, what things? They said, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. And how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. He knows what he's doing when our memory is weak. How did they describe Jesus? You get a Bible, what's it say?
Prophet.
Man, prophet, a man. These guys had worshipped him as God. They understood the claims to deity. They were all on board. But now they are so hurting. They are so disillusioned that when they describe Jesus, he was a man. They don't even say we thought he was God. They don't want to embarrass themselves what they were believing. He was a prophet, and like the rest of the prophets, they killed him. The past is often just as much a figment of our imagination as the future. If you'd asked these guys 48 hours ago, maybe 60 hours ago, who Jesus is, he's gone. He's the Son of God. He's the Messiah. They were sure of it. They were all in. They were sold. They were going to stake their lives on it. But now, I don't know, man, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he didn't actually claim to be God. Maybe he didn't say that he was the Son of Man from Daniel. Maybe he didn't really mean what he said. Maybe it was just religion. I mean, I went to church every Sunday. I prayed every night. I even donated some money. I even volunteered to put candy in Easter eggs. And this is how you repay me? God's not real. If God were real, there's no way God would do this. We had hoped he would be the one to redeem Israel. We thought we understood. We thought we got it. We thought we were on the same page. I don't know, maybe I just really wanted to believe that stuff. I guess I really didn't know what I thought I knew. It's interesting because here's Jesus being described to himself by his own disciples. The last time one of Jesus' disciples told Jesus who he was, they were up in Caesarea Philippi, which is the northern part of Israel, And he said, hey, who's everybody saying I am? And they're like, oh man, some people think you're like John the Baptist reborn. Some people think you're Elijah reborn. And he's like, oh yeah, but who do you guys think I am? And Peter said, you are the Christ. You are the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, man has not revealed this to you, Peter, but my Father in heaven has. The last time a disciple told Jesus who he was, they confessed him as God, and now these guys are saying, he was just a dude. He was just a prophet. He was nobody special. He doesn't condemn them. He doesn't say, don't you remember I told you this was going to happen? Even in this conversation, Jesus is walking them down a path of discovery. Second half of verse 21. We had hoped he would be the one to redeem Israel. Yes, besides all of this, it's now the third day since these things happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back saying they had even seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it as the women had said, but they did not see. But him they did not see. He knows what he's doing when our faith is weak. Let me tell you, that's when discouragement gets really hard. When it's not just, did I misunderstand the promise? Did I misunderstand what he said? But whatever, man. I don't know if any of it's real. Would it be that difficult to believe that Jesus had risen again? I mean, these are the guys that hung out with Jesus. So if you're to rewind just 2 years, they were with Jesus when there's a funeral procession coming by, and they're kind of watching what happens, and there's a widow and her only son is dead in the casket. Jesus touches the casket, and the boy or the guy, whoever, I don't know how old he is, comes back to life and raised that guy from the dead. They were there when Jairus comes to them and says, hey, can you come and lay your hands on my daughter? She's sick. Would you heal her? Jesus says, yeah, I'll do it. On the way to the house, someone shows up and says, don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter's dead. And Jesus said, just be cool. Believe. They get to the house, and the girl's dead. And Jesus says, she's not dead. She's sleeping. And they laughed at him and kicked everybody in the house. And he said, little girl, get up. The little girl got up. 2 weeks ago, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Possibly less. Somewhere between 10 and 14 days ago, he showed up at Lazarus' tomb. Lazarus had been there for 4 days. He told the guys, roll the stone away. Lazarus, come forth. And a guy comes walking out, and yet, they can't believe at all that Jesus would be alive. You know why it's hard to believe? Because faith is hard. And we can criticize and we can mock and we can say he's foolish disciples. Faith is hard. Don't ever feel like if you're questioning your faith that there's something wrong with you, that you don't believe enough or you haven't heard enough or maybe I'm a bad Christian. You know why there's so many verses in the Bible about persevering? Because it's hard. The entire book of Jude, which was written by Jesus' brother, the whole theme is keep the faith. Keep the faith. This is difficult. You're going to be tested. Man, if I was a real Christian, I wouldn't be tested like this. Really? Because Moses was tested, and Paul was tested, and everybody in between them was tested, and lots of times they felt like they wanted to give up. And Satan's going to whisper in your ear and say, just give up. It's not real. You're not less of a Christian because you're struggling with your faith. A few years ago, some of you know this story, I had planned a church in Birmingham, Alabama, and I thought I was going to live in Birmingham for the rest of my life. And very quickly, the church, up and out, down, done. Church closed in 9 months. And I watched it happen. It was painful. But what was exponentially more painful was that some guys in the district authority level decided the reason the church closed was because I had not just made bad decisions, but I had made intentional bad decisions and had mishandled some things, and they revoked my credentials. So now I don't have a job, and I can't even interview for a job because I have no credentials anymore, and they had trumped up some ridiculous charges that I had to answer. In the meantime, I got to take my family to church because I'm a Christian. That's what you do. So we started attending this church, and I was sitting about where Kale's sitting. The room was a little bit smaller than this. And I sat there every week. And I'd stand when they sang songs, and I'd sit when they preached, and I'd say, God, I don't want to be here at all. I want to quit. Not I want to quit church. I want to quit you. I'm out. I'm done on all this. I am done. I gave everything for this. I quit the greatest job I ever had to come down here because you told me to. I bought a stinking house that I can't afford. Now, through what I'm still convinced at that point was entirely no fault of my own, because I'm perfect, this church closes, and then I get blamed, not just for it closing, but for all these ridiculous things that never actually happened, and now I can't even interview for a job to feed my family. I'm driving a limousine from 1 p.m. till 3 in the morning to barely make enough money to pay my bills. I quit. That's where I was at. But I couldn't get to the place where I didn't believe that God was God. Because once you've seen truth, you can't unsee truth. And as disheartened as these guys are, they're not walking away from their faith. And I didn't get there. I didn't walk away from my faith, clearly. Verse 25, and Jesus said to them, the language sounds harsh, it's not. O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So they drew near to the village. Well, that's a conversation I'd like to have in the Bible, huh? Jesus explaining the entire Old Testament. But it's not the point. So they drew near to the village to which they were going, and he acted as if he was going further, but they urged him strongly, saying, Stay with us, for it's toward evening, and the day is now far spent. So he went in to stay with them, and while he was at the table with them, he took the bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. What? But the second they realized who he was gone. They said to each other, Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked on the road, and while he opened to us the scriptures? They rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. Like they stopped eating, they got up and they 7 miles back to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and those who were with them gathered there, saying, The Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon. Then they told what had happened on the road and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. That's the story in Mark that says the two saw Jesus on the road, but the rest of the disciples didn't believe. He knows what he's doing, and he will reveal himself in time. God knows exactly how hot it is. His hand is on the thermostat. He knows how much pressure you're under. He knows what you can take. And when the time is coming, he will reveal what he's doing. Why does he wait? I mean, why doesn't he just tell us up front what's going to happen? Well, there's a lesson to be learned. See, at that point, they still didn't have the big picture. How often are our disappointments because we don't have the big picture? I mean, what if they fully understood on Palm Sunday what was going to happen? We're coming to Jerusalem. It's Palm Sunday. On Friday, I'm getting nailed to a cross. What do you think they'd have tried to do? Try to stop it. Let's get out of here. Let's go. How tragic would that have been if the cross had been prevented? What if God told you up front what was going to come out of the trial he was taking you through? How badly would you screw it up? You'd either run from it, or you'd run to it and get there too early. Can we just trust that he knows what he's doing? It was necessary for these things to happen. We said that disappointment is the difference between expectations and experience. How many times has disappointment taken us not just to a place of growth, but to a place that we never would have gotten to on our own? See, a few years ago when I was sitting in that church not wanting to attend church anywhere, I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, somebody in the denomination up in the president's office got involved and said, these accusations against Bob don't make any sense. The guy's been with us for 22 years. This is either show some evidence or we're dismissing this. Well, there was no evidence. So they dismissed the charges and wrote me a letter of recommendation. But by then I was already moving back to Western Pennsylvania, and Lord knows there's no good churches in Western Pennsylvania. And now I've got the greatest job I've ever had in my life. But yet 3.5 years ago I was sitting in a church while the pastor's up there, I know what happens, right? I walked in that Sunday and he says, we're going to start a sermon series on James. Consider it great joy when you face trials of many kinds. And I'm like, God thinks he's so funny. Like, just shut up. I don't want to hear it. I know James. I don't care. As I sat there and fought with God, that stuff wasn't even about me in Birmingham. God was doing so many other things and working. And I got kicked around a little bit, but man, did I end up on the good side of that deal. Mostly because I get to hang out with Russ. Sometimes God's taking you through something, and believe it or not, it's not about you. Why did Jesus put his disciples through all this stuff? Because it wasn't just about them. It was about you. And it was about me. It was about every person that was going to hear that story for the rest of time. And had he told them up front what was going to happen, they would have ruined it. Can we trust that he knows what he's doing? Now listen, I'm not going to pretend for a minute that it's easy to trust that God knows what he's doing when you're going through the storm. Right? 100% guilty of wanting to quit. I don't know what storm you're facing right now. I don't know what disappointment may or may not have slammed into you in the last 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 years. But I don't want to pretend like there's something wrong with you if you're having trouble believing. Heck, these were the disciples. They were having trouble believing. I mean, if anybody shouldn't have had a problem, it should have been the guys that hung out with Jesus. So please don't feel like you're letting God down, or you're a bad Christian, or maybe that you just didn't understand. This is hard stuff. And we're going to close and pray in a moment. And if you want someone to pray with you, we're going to have some elders up front who actually want to do that with you this morning. Because sometimes I need somebody to not just pray with me, but I need somebody to pray for me. Because I'm tired of asking God to fix it. And I don't even have the stinking words anymore. If you ask me what's going on, I'm just going to stand there looking sad, and I'm going to ramble, and I'm going to mumble, and I'm going to describe God not as he is, because I don't know what's happening. And listen, if I could get Jesus Christ to come down here and stand with you and put his arm around you and say, tell me what's going on, I would do that. But we believe that God's Holy Spirit is here this morning, that he exists inside every one of these believers. And we've got people in this room that love you, that want to sit with you, that want to hear your story and want to pray with you and want to give you that hope so that next Sunday you're going to celebrate with us. So I'm going to pray, and if you want someone to pray with you, I just ask that you would come forward and we'll spend some time praying together.